Good morning, and welcome to my senior capstone project. My name is Aiden Stewart, and my project is titled Leveraging Advanced Analytics to Predict Baseball Production. As you can see here, here's my email. My advisor for this project is Dr. Biesicker. I am going to South Dakota State University from the Departments of Mathematics and Statistics, and this is Spring 2024 project. All right. So, as you can see, I'm going to be working with baseball data. Introduction, Major League Baseball, the MLB, is one of the oldest and most well-known professional sports leagues in the world. It's a very data-driven sport, especially very recently, and one of the most well-used data, and what MLB actually sponsors is this data called StatCast. It generates 7 terabytes of data each MLB game. This data can range from data from each pitch, which shows like the pitch velocity, the pitch speed, spin rate, the pitch's vertical and horizontal movement, to the batter's data, which is the batter's swing path, the batter's swing speed, the exit velocity if they hit the ball, and it even gets data for where the position of each player's is, or like the position of each player, the position of umpires. It shows all of this data. It also generates like slow-mo replays, and like 3D rendering of it. So as you can see, why it generates 7 terabytes of data. An introduction to our data. The data we'll be using for this project comes from 2 different sources, 2 different references. Baseball Reference and Baseball Savant. This Baseball Reference page was first launched in April 2000. Just kind of a bunch of nerds who wanted to see the stats from years before, and just compiled them all into one website, and they are still doing it today. And Baseball Savant is actually the website for StatCast. So this is sponsored by the MLB. It was first launched in 2014 as a prototype, and then in 2015 was the first season that every single stadium used this technology, which uses actually like Doppler radar technology to track the location of each ball of each player. So the first data that we're going to look at is the Baseball Reference data. This data is full career data from every position player that played in the 2002 to 2012 All-Star games. So we'll end up with 85 unique players, and obviously they're All-Star players, so they have a lot of career data, which gives us 1,390 rows of data, and we have 48 columns. The next step that we're going to be looking at is to model our data. The variable that we're going to be using is a production variable. And to make this production variable, we want to use StatCast data, but we don't have a production variable in StatCast. So we are going to be using a variable from this Baseball Reference data set called win probability added, or WPA. And as you can see, there's a lot of, data points in this, but WPA is right here. And we are going to be trying to find the variables that most correlate with it to make our own production variable, to like kind of generate our own production variable. So as you can see from this red means that it very highly correlates, blue means it doesn't correlate, and there's not too many blues, and there's a chunk of red here. This chunk of red is CWPA and RE24. This CWPA is corrected win probability added, which is just another version of win probability added. And this RE24 is a run expectancy for 2024, the next year at when I produce this data. So it's already a production variable. I could have worked with that, but I decided we'll decide to use win probability added for this. It's a little hard to see which variables correlate the most with this, so we're actually going to make a table with all these values. Obviously, WPA is going to correlate perfectly with WPA. We have RE24 here. Shows that it's 92% correlated. So this shows that it is a good production variable to do. And the next one is OPS plus. Now this is on base plus slugging, as you can see right here. There's another one. But this plus just adjusts the value for park factor and for league factor. So there's a different weight to it every year. But this OPS plus basically just is another way of OPS. But to show that OPS plus is 78% of that correlates with it to a 0.78 value with its WPA, shows that it's a very high correlation. This ROBA is a on-base average. It's just another variable. We don't have it in Baseball Savant, so we won't be taking a look at it. We've already looked at OPS. OBP is on-base percentage, which is already in the calculation for OPS. There's home runs. This is just the number of home runs they hit. ISO, which is isometric power. This is a calculation of a power stat. So this home run total is just a raw number of home runs, and home run percentage obviously is your home runs per at bat. But this isometric power takes into account not only home runs but doubles hit and triples hit. So I think it's more well-rounded variable, so we'll be using that for our production variable. And then finally we have batting average on here. This is just the most basic stat from baseball. It takes your hits divided by your at-bats. It really is that simple. So it just shows how often do you get a hit. That's basically it. But it shows that it's a 0.589, which ranks 9th in the level. The next thing we'll be looking at here is our Baseball Savant data. This data is compiled from baseballsavant.com. I think it's .mob.com. And is included with every player's seasonal data from the seasons 2016 to 2023. So if you can think of how many teams are there, 30 MLB teams, and each team has a roster of over 20 players. And players move in and out of the league. So there's quite a few players here. And as you can see, we get a wide range of ages. And so that's what we're trying to look at. Our model is going to be trying to predict how well a player performs in each age. So yeah, this gives us 796 unique players, and each player, each of one of these rows, 2550 rows with 18 columns. Every row is a seasonal data for a certain player. So multiple players will have more than 1 year of data, obviously, in this data set. As you can see, we kind of took out some outliers here. I took out every single player in above 40 and 19 for this, since there's really only a few for each age. And I also took out every single player that had less than 200 plate appearances on a year, just so that doesn't skew our data here. All right, now after we have an introduction on our data, we're going to be looking at our production variable. Now, I know I said 3 before, but it's actually coming from 4 variables. We have OPS, expected batting average, expected ISO, and OAA, which is outs above average. This expected batting average and expected ISO are basically the same version of the batting average and ISO, but it takes out more of the luck factor that we get in baseball, because baseball, if you've ever watched it, is a very lucky sport. Whether you just completely rip a baseball, but it just goes right at someone, you'll get a higher value for your XBA and ISO if you hit it very hard. But if you hit it soft and just straight into the ground, but get a hit out of it, that'll take a decrease on your XBA and XISO, but obviously increase on your batting average. And then OAA, outs above average. This is a defensive stat that MLB actually uses in Baseball Savant only. They do not release the calculation for this variable. They kind of keep it a secret for some reason. I'm not sure why. But this stat basically gives you an integer value after each season, and just shows how well a player did defensively that year. So if you have positive outs above average, that means you did your defense better than an average player by, if you had a 9 outs above average, you recorded 9 more outs than an average player would have that year. And so the best defensive players, I think, are around 15. Just kind of normalizes around 0. 0 is average. So, yeah. To make this production variable, we will be normalizing the variables to prevent one variable from dominating the score. And we will assign weights to these variables. The weighing scheme that I chose, or that we'll choose, is offensive will be 60% and defensive will be 40%. That's just saying that offensive power or offensive output just goes to 60% of the production that one player can do, and then defensive is 40%. Because I mean, you need to score to win games, but you also need to prevent them from scoring to win games. So now that we have this data, I named it composite score, so you're not confused by the plot. But to show this model, we're calculating the average production score by each age, and that's what this plot is showing. And really, it kind of does what we would expect. These new players in the league, they're going to be, around average. Then they're going to get better in this area after they come more accustomed to the league, get used to the major league level pitching, and then as their body starts to wear down, they can start to falter and get a little bit worse. So with this data, we're going to be throwing models on it, and we're going to be looking at 3 types of models. The first one is a linear model. Next one is a quadratic model. The last one is a cubic model. And this is the linear model. Now, as you can see, this model does not fit our data. It really just doesn't work. The R-squared for this is 0.3544, which is not good for this type of data. But it doesn't show this curve at all. It really is just not good. I just wanted to put it in here to show that this linear model does get an output, does show that, that each year a player gets worse overall. On average, a player gets worse by each player age. And so that's just what I wanted to show here. But the next model we'll be looking at is a quadratic model. And so that model will be able to show the curve of our data. So this quadratic model gives us a 0.52 adjusted R-squared, as you can see down here. That means that 52% of our variance is explained. Now, if you look at this plot and you look at this data, not many models are going to be able to get a good high R-squared value from this. It really just shows that there's a little bit of a peak here, this model, and then there's a drop off. And that's really all you can do here. I mean, since there's so much variance right here with the ages, 34, 33, 32, this goes up and down. And even look at this, 36, 37, 38. 37's performing about average in my data set, and 38 is the worst age. So this is really tough data to model. But I believe that this model shows us the best picture so far. It shows us that around the ages 26, 27, 28 is your peaking. You're doing your best performance there. And then you start to slightly hinder your data or your performance, and then you drop off. We can also look at a cubic model, It really just flattens out this top curve. It gives us a worse r squared, and these coefficients down here, this last one is not significant at all. So after seeing that, we know that a quadratic model is what we want to work with. There is one last thing that we can do for our data to kind of make it easier to model on, and that is called mean normalization. To do this, we calculate a certain player's average score for their career. So instead of taking average on age, we take an average score of each player's career, and then for each age in that career, we subtract the score that they get for that year. So say someone had a 2-year career, and one year they had a 0.1, and the other year they had a negative 0.1. Their average is going to be 0. And so, actually it's the other way around. We subtract their score by their average. So that first year, they're going to have a 0.1 score. So say it's 25, age 25, they had 0.1. And then for age 26, they're going to have a negative 0.1. It just isn't, it's just a way to like show each player's kind of path of their career. And I mean, as you can see, this is a much nicer looking set of data from the other one. This still shows that 38 and 37 have a huge discrepancy, and also this age 30 here, 33, but it's still a very nice looking plot of data. Since our quadratic model worked the most for the last piece of data, or the last model, we're going to use that again. And look at that, 0.7209 is our r squared. However, this data shows that the age that they peak at is a little bit later than what the other model showed. Because the other model was peaking about right here at 25, 26, 27. This model is peaking at 27, 28, 29, or 26, 27, 28. It just shows our peak at a different spot, which is kind of interesting to me. But then it still shows that when you first get into league, you have a negative composite score. Then you get better as the league, or as your career develops, as you become a stronger player, more mentally sound player. And then you hit a drop off when your body starts failing on you. Your body gets weaker. And there's another way we can show this drop off, and this is called a t-test. A t-test is a statistical hypothesis test used to determine whether there's a significant difference between the means of two groups. This t-test that we'll be doing is a delta 3 t-test, which means that we'll be looking at a change in 3 separate units. So in our case, 3 years of change. So we will be looking at the ages of 21 to 24, 30 to 33, that 3-year difference. To do this, we are going to be taking players who only have those 2 years of data. So for looking at the 24 to 27, we're not taking the average of 24 and 27. We are taking the players who they have both age 24 and 27 seasons in our data, and then we're taking those values and subtracting the age 24 by the age 27. And then we're running the t-test on it. And as you can see here, these t values, they start positive, but then they immediately start going negative. So this is a 24 to 27. So from 24 to 27, it looks like you get a little bit worse, but that's also not really proven by the p-value. But then it looks like you start to get much worse. And with the negative 2s even into the negative 4 p-values. And that is proven by all of this. This line here, as you can see, is the 0.05 benchmark for the p-value. And we show this in table form here as well. So our first age pair, 21 to 24, it's showing that you get better, get better, get better. And then as soon as you hit these 24 to 20 kind of 8, is when you start really seeing that downward trend start to happen, and these p-values start to prove that with p-values well under 0.05. So, in conclusion, we are observing that players typically reach their peak performance level in their late 20s, typically around 26 to 28 years old. And then after that, they're hitting a drop-off where they kind of become worse players. An application of this project is managers of MLB teams are able to use this information to help guide them to which players will be performing better in certain ages of their career, and then and which players to give a contract based on their age. Obviously, managers have a lot more access to data than I do, but this is just kind of a preliminary way that I can show that players model their age. I kind of stumbled over my words there, but yeah. So here are my references here. It is baseballsavant.mlb.com, and then here's my bibliography. I'm from Brooklyn, South Dakota. I'm currently finishing my final semester of undergraduate studies of data science. I'm also minoring in statistics and computer science. I will attend South Dakota State University this next year, pursuing a Master's of Science in Data Science. And as always, like sports, I love to watch all types of it, especially if it involves the Jackrabbits. And in my free time, I like playing video games or playing catch outside. This says someday I hope to work as a data analyst with an MLB team, but over the summer I'll be working with the Sioux Falls Canaries as their TrackMan operator, which is data analytics. But thank you for joining me for my senior project. If you have any questions, you can post them down in the comments, and I will respond to them as much as I can. Thank you very much.